Hey kids, this is Chef Jack with another edition of Marvel vs. DC. You all know the rules by now. Englentine and I have divided up every single comic book released by both DC and Marvel, and each week we review those new releases. We give each book a score of 1 to 5 stars, and at the end we average out the points, and the publisher with the best average score is the winner for that week. With all that said, let's get this party started. The 1-star books. These are the worst. Not merely bad, but awful and horrendous. Avoid them at all costs. Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe again, number 2. Okay, here's the plot summary for this issue in one sentence. The writers contrive even more idiotic ways in which Deadpool gets to kill superheroes for no damn reason at all. This time, Deadpool's targets are most of the Spider family characters, including Jessica Drew, Peter Parker, and Miles Morales. There is some attempt at dark humor here, but it's nothing more than gross, and the utterly nonsensical plot continues to be the most idiotic thing I've read in a while. I'm talking Gabby Rivera, America Chavez level of stupid writing. Cullen Bunn actually attempts to turn this murderous rampage into a tragedy, but it's just not working. I will say there is a bright spot, and that is the very last page with the quote-unquote surprise cameo of Gwenpool, only because it gives you the hope that maybe she can stop this mess, but she's not going to be able to. You know she's not going to be able to. There is absolutely nothing worth spending your time or your money on with this entire series, much less this individual issue. The 2-star books. These comics might be bad, but there's usually 1 or 2 things that save them from being truly horrible. Astonishing X-Men number 1. Folks, the plot of this issue is pretty simple, and it sets up what potentially could be a much more interesting story down the line. And that is, something's killing the psychics around the Marvel world, and when the killer finally reaches Psylocke and tries to assassinate her, she calls for help and gets that help in the form of a newly assembled team of X-Men veterans. Unfortunately, that plot sounds a lot more exciting than it is actually presented in this issue, as basically there's nothing more than continuing of the status quo going on here. There's almost nothing here that stands out doing anything new. Now, it's clear that this series is conceived to be the if you only read one X-Men book, read this one kind of thing. And in light of that, it is easy for new readers to get into it, but the old-time readers are not going to be too impressed. I have to say, the best thing about the series is that it utilizes a lot of fan-favorite characters that we aren't seeing elsewhere, but I have a question, and I don't mean this as a jab at the character, but how many times can they put Old Man Logan into different series before somebody at Marvel realizes that they are vastly overusing this character? Invincible Iron Man number 9. Riri Williams and her narcissistic insistence that she is always the smartest and most capable person in the world gets her into serious trouble when she finally bites off more than she can chew. I gotta be honest, I wasn't buying into the entire fan-created Riri is actually a supervillain thing, but then she goes and does what she does in this issue. I mean, not only does she invade a sovereign nation and overthrow its ruler, she then declares herself that nation's brand new queen. So yeah, supervillain territory. The action here was actually pretty good, and I never have complained about the art, but none of that can elevate the idiotic plot at all. It is, the plot is just trash. Plus, the entire angsty conversation involving the AIs is nothing we haven't seen before in everything else that has ever featured an AI, ever. So while, yeah, this issue had some potential, as usual, it wasted it. Luke Cage number 3. Burstein's former subjects continue to become more and more violent as supplies of his quote-unquote cure start to run low. And as tensions mount, Luke's caught in the middle. I really wanted to like this comic book more than I do. I mean, Luke Cage is a great character, and I've been a fan of him for a while. But at this point, it's obvious that this series, this issue particularly, is being carried by the art. Now, the art itself is crisp and it's dynamic, and at the same time, it's deceptively minimalistic. But the story in this issue, in the previous 2 issues, They read like a massive retcon for Luke Cage's backstory, and the entire thing just seems to be unnecessary. Plus, it's confusing, and to be honest, it feels like a soap opera plot. And that's not how Luke Cage is supposed to feel. Luke Cage is supposed to be about the action. Luke Cage is about moral choices. It's not supposed to be a soap opera. Trinity number 11. The virus infecting the Justice League turns out to not be what it appears. And as Wonder Woman discovers the truth, Batman and Superman have their own battles to wage, all the while the Watchtower is still plummeting to Earth. I gotta tell you folks, this issue was just chock full of problems. It was way too quick and tidy for one thing. I mean, I understand that short story arcs can be tough to pace because, you know, they end just as they're getting started. But it's not impossible. We've seen people do it before in a lot of really compelling stories. Everything in this issue is told over voiceover and with narration, and on top of it all, the dialogue is just bad. The episode feels tacked on and artificial, despite the fact that it calls back to the prologue 2 issues ago. And the art would have been amazing in any other context, but right now it just feels muddled and badly done. I cannot recommend this issue. X-Men Gold number 8. This issue has a paper-thin premise, and that is that there's a serial killer killing mutants and he's attacking the students at the school, and the X-Men have to stop him. The problem is, the guy's just not a believable villain. Not against the X-Men. I mean, he's basically a guy with a suit of body armor and some guns. And that's it. Sure, you know, the writer has him actually, you know, they pretend he's a threat until the very end when he's taken out casually once you get to the end of the issue. It just felt artificial. It was too contrived to be enjoyable. The only part of it that didn't feel like that was the bit involving Nightcrawler being rescued from an angry mob by Old Man Logan and Storm. But the rest of the issue, it just wasn't deep enough. It wasn't well thought out enough. It was like the writer was like, oh yeah, that's right, I got to put out an issue. Here's the issue. That's how it felt. The 3-star books. These comics are just average. They fall neither on the good end of the spectrum nor the bad. Cave Carson has a cybernetic eye number 10. After the destruction of the mighty mole, the team crash lands in a dimension filled with sentient plant life and megafauna, all of which is trying to eat our heroes. From the opening sequence in which we see Cave mourn the mighty mole and all that it means to him, to the tragic death of one of the survivors, every single panel in this issue is filled with tangible emotion. There is absolutely no slowdown at all as the team pushes forward and the plot continues with them. There's only brief moments to catch your breath here and there. Unfortunately, the art is still muddled, and it is muddled so badly that it turns an otherwise excellent issue into one that's merely acceptable. I honestly blame this on the garish colors and the color mixes throughout the issue. They're a distraction, to be honest, and I'm beginning to think that what might be best for this series is for them to get a decent artist. Darth Maul number 5. Finally, the inevitable duel between kidnapped Jedi Padawan Eldra Caddus and Darth Maul is here. The majority of the issue is in fact taken up by it. I'll be honest, I'm kind of up and down about this issue. On the one hand, the fight is beautifully drawn and it's interspersed with interesting character action and some fun dialogue. But on the other hand, we know that Darth Maul is in absolutely no danger of dying until he runs into Obi-Wan Kenobi in The Phantom Menace. So there's not a lot of tension here. It's, you know, we already know how this fight's going to end. Cullen Bunn, the writer, does his best to make this engaging anyway, but I gotta tell you, this is definitely a case where the anticipation, the build-up for the fight, was much better than the final execution of it. I don't think it's Cullen Bunn's fault, it's just the way things worked out since we found out about this character first and we saw how he died first. So this is an okay issue, but it's not a really great issue. Doctor Strange, number 23. Doctor Strange and his companions take the fight to Baron Mordo. This issue was, for me at least, a mixed bag. On the one hand, Doctor Strange's lack of ability irks me. He's supposed to be the most powerful sorcerer in the world, and here he is being slapped around like a bitch. On the other hand, it's pretty cool to see Baron Mordo being taken seriously, since he is supposed to be the second most powerful sorcerer in the world after Strange. Also, I really didn't realize it until this issue, but the current storyline is effectively a team-up between Doctor Strange and the Netflix Defenders, which is a really cool idea, but it's also something we're not likely to ever see in a live-action production anytime soon. The action in this issue is predictable, and the dialogue's a little overblown, but neither is so bad enough as to cause me to say that this is a bad issue. It doesn't fail so much as it just doesn't live up to my hopes and to the story's potential. Green Lanterns number 27. In this week's issue of Green Lanterns, we get to meet yet another one of the First Lanterns, while Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz just try to survive wherever it is that their encounter with Volthoom landed them. With Simon's ring destroyed, it's up to Jessica to do all of the heavy lifting. This is an alright issue, but it's not a good issue. The biggest problem I had was the meandering plot. I mean, sure, there's a lot of action as Simon and Jessica try to find a place to just stop and figure out what's going on without constantly being attacked by some monster, but it's a gimmick that quickly overstays its welcome. And the revelation where they are isn't precisely a surprise. I mean, we can see it coming. There were hints in previous issues that Volthoom comes from the distant past. But this leads to another problem, and I know this is a bit of a nitpick. Earth, and by which I mean the planet, isn't 10 billion years old. And this mistake actually spoiled the story just a little bit for me. And like I said, I know it's a nitpick, but I have a hard time believing that Sam Humphries doesn't know how to use Google to find out the actual age of the planet Earth. The 4-star books. Now we're getting to the good stuff. These are the comics we can actually recommend. Batwoman number 5. This issue details the story of how Kathy Kane met and fell in love with Sophia Sohail. It really tells the story of Batwoman's lost year just after she was kicked out of West Point for revealing that she was a lesbian. It's all about her experiences on the pirate isle of Coriana and what eventually drove her to become the hero that she is now. I gotta say, the art in this issue is simply gorgeous, and the story is pretty compelling. It shines an interesting light on the character that we don't really know enough about without getting too sappy or too avaricious about it. There are some problems with the issue, of course. You can see the ending coming for a couple of blocks away, for example. But all in all, this is a very enjoyable issue. Daredevil number 24. Matt Murdock loses the case at the state Supreme Court level and then sets out to take it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court in Washington. But for that he needs the help of Foggy Nelson, and that means rebuilding some bridges he thought long since burnt. Also, Tombstone is still out there. I gotta tell you, in some ways, this has been the best part of the Supreme story arc yet. The characterization is amazing, and anything that makes you feel like these are living, breathing people is just gravy. I especially like Foggy Nelson's lecture to Matt about how Matt is often not only a shitty friend, but sometimes is just his own worst enemy. It feels real. Unfortunately, you then have the utterly unnecessary fight scene. I mean, seriously, it feels like some executive at Marvel saw the otherwise amazing characterization going on and went, well, why isn't he punching somebody? So, you know, they just threw a fight scene in for no real good reason. Otherwise, this is a fantastic continuation of a great story, and I cannot wait for the conclusion in the next issue. All New Guardians of the Galaxy number 6. The war between the Elders of the Universe continues. While the team is confronting Gamora about her sudden obsession with the Soul Stone, the Milano is attacked by the original owners of the ship, the Shi'ar assassins known as the Fraternity of Raptors. Overall, I really liked this issue, even if the humor seemed a bit more forced than usual this time. For me, I thought some of the best moments were what Jerry Dugan was doing with the backstory. He really dived deep into Marvel's cosmic mythology in this one, and he's using it as a basis for Gamora's motivations way beyond she's a Thanos-created killing machine, which is pretty much what all previous writers used. I especially like that he remembered that Drax was a part of her background also. And those last few pages involving the gardener, who's one of the more forgotten elders of the galaxy, it's all beginning to heat up. It's not a perfect issue, but it really is only a hair's breadth away from a 5-star review. Justice League 25. Molly the Keeper's back, telling tales to Batman about an oncoming multidimensional threat. And while this is going on, the rest of the League has to face off against an enemy from a far distant past. When I first read this issue, I thought it was a fun little romp, and I was going to recommend it, but then I went back and I reread it a couple of times, and I realized that a lot of the various concepts that have been put into place all the way back as far as Justice League Rebirth #1 are suddenly beginning to make a lot more sense. It feels like everything's beginning to come to a head, and that those earlier stories are about to pay off. That said, this is not a perfect issue. It does have some flaws, and it has a lot of the same flaws that the earlier issues had. For example, I can't help but feel that it was all over way too quickly. There was this fantastic setup, and then the story just kind of petered out. It's like, boom, it's over. It would have been better if this story had been able to be written over multiple issues to allow the writer a little bit more room, I think. Ms. Marvel #20. This issue opens up with a rather well-written speech about how homegrown terrorists are really created, and it sets the tone for the rest of the issue. Now, the story itself has Kamala Khan take on the paranoia and the anger that fuels Trumpism, and that's a pretty bold move. But it is especially perfect for the character, considering that among all of Marvel's stable, she's always been a symbol of, the happier, better times. That said, there's not a lot of teeth to this story, but that may just be because it's still building. This is the beginning. We're not getting into the meat of it yet. I love how the villains clearly represent the current presidential administration, which is also not a bad thing. They are exactly presenting them the way the president does. And remember, guys, out of the two of us, I'm the liberal, Englantine's the conservative. Also, Discord might be the basis to be a pretty good nemesis for Ms. Marvel, and she needs one. The 5-star books. These books are the best of the best, at least for this week. These are the ones that we recommend the most. Ultimates 2, number 9. The Eternity War is ramping up as the Maker and the High Evolutionary join forces. They've got an ultimate plan for the multiverse, but just whose side they're on is anybody's guess. Meanwhile, Galactus takes the fight to the Dark Celestials. Okay, so this book was just mind-blowing. That's it. That's all I got. That's my entire review. I don't even know what else to say about it. I mean, when the hell have we ever seen Galactus used this well in any story since the character was created back in the early 60s? It's just perfect. The entire thing was perfect. It was a great combination of the art and the story and the use of the characters and the characterization itself and the ideas behind it all. It just took us on a trip through just another level entirely of the Marvel Universe, and it tilted everything that we knew on its head. If you haven't been reading this series, you need to get it. This is a fantastic read. The Wildstorm number 6. This issue picks up almost immediately from where we left off in the last issue. Michael Cray and Christine Trelane are in Cray's apartment discussing employment possibilities, and I said that with air quotes, when there's a knock at his door, and then comes what is one of the most amazing sequences of art and action I have seen in a long, long time. This action sequence takes up the entire first half of this issue, and it is filled with blood and gore and violence that absolutely does not feel gratuitous. In the last half of the issue, there's a sequence with Void that is creepier than anything that we've ever seen involving that character before, and it just confirms that she is what she always has been, a weird, otherworldly character. This entire story is absolutely compelling, and it's got realistic, grounded characters involved in what otherwise should be a completely over-the-top, unrealistic plot. If you've ever wondered how the utterly silly Wildcats book from the 90s could be made into a chilling suspense thriller, this issue is how. And now to round up the scores. Marvel Comics had 1 1-star issue, 4 2-star issues, 2 3-star issues, 3 4-star issues, and 1 5-star issue. That gives them a total of 32 points. I reviewed 11 issues, which means their average score is 2.9. On the other hand, DC had no 1-star issues, only 1 2-star issue, 2 3-star issues, 2 4-star issues, and a single 5-star issue, giving them a total score of 21 points. I reviewed 6 DC Comics issues this week, which gives them an average score of 3.5. And that means that the winner for the week, folks, is DC Comics. But folks, what did you think about these comics? Was I right? Was I wrong? Was I, just completely full of it? Tell me why you think so in the comments below. If you like this video and you want to see more of them, click like and subscribe and the little notification bell in the corner so you don't miss any of our future videos. And if you feel like helping out, we've got a Patreon page and a VidMe page set up, and there are links below. Feel free to wander over and drop $1 in the till. But even if you don't do that, thanks for taking the time out to watch. We do appreciate it, and we hope to catch you next time. Thank you very, very much for watching.
I've got time to think about the beauty of 1,000 variations of the beating of a wing, of a hummingbird suspended in the aspic of the world, moving slower than molasses as I'm off to catch the